I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long week while I'm sitting in committee, but I know I'll be a loss. Yeah, yeah, 'cause I hope and pray that I'll, but today
Keep praying, Bill, because you will not become a law while conservatives are still obstructing everything in sight. This is Bill Scher on the Liberal Oasis radio show. Hope you are about to have a good weekend. Hope you have dug out from the blizzard just in time for the next one. Don't want to leave a mess before another storm comes. That's just rude. Seems to me I'm in a bit of a funk this weekend myself because I had a shred of optimism that the upcoming presidential primary races might be about something. Might be about an issue or two. Something to chew on, something to make an informed decision about, but I believe it's going to be, at least on the Democratic side, it's going to be about how powerful is Oprah. It's going to be about how mean is it that Hillary Clinton is tossing around charges of drug use, at least by her surrogates. All that kind of mumbo-jumbo, not really about the issues at hand. On the Republican side, even though they don't actually put out policy papers on most things, that would be a lot of extra work. They are talking about some issues. Who hates immigrants the most? Who is the biggest hypocrite on taxes? And who will outlaw the most abortions? It's at least issues. There's some substance there. But no one is really talking about any kind of great detail the issues that are really matter most to the American public. If you go to the Democratic candidates' websites, you will find, I think, pretty decent policy papers. They exist. They have some substance to talk about if they so chose. But the media is not terribly interested in it, and the candidates aren't doing very much to force the media's hand in making them talk about it. So we're left with a lot of fluff. I will try not to fall into that trap today. And in particular, this week, in the past 2 weeks, there's been a lot of substance going on in Washington on one of the critical issues, and that is on energy independence and global warming. We had come out of the Senate Environmental Committee last week, the first comprehensive global warming bill. It's not perfect by a long shot. There's some significant flaws in it, and I will talk about those. But it is a great step forward. The momentum of the debate is moving because of, in large part, Al Gore, who won the Nobel Peace Prize, was awarded the Peace Prize this week, along with the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I think you'll have noticed during this blizzard a diminishing of the knee-jerk conservative comment, global warming, what are you talking about? There's a foot of snow outside. No one's really doing that anymore, and if they are, they're getting laughed out of the room. The vast majority of the country, the vast majority of the world realizes that this is a critical emergency, as saw in the Daily Hampshire Gazette, a story about how the Arctic ice caps are melting rapidly. One scientist quoted, "The Arctic is screaming. Something needs to be done immediately." And okay, we have that one bill coming out of the Senate committee. It's going to hit the floor arguably next month. We also had this week an energy bill. This was smaller in scope. Potentially going to be a big step, though. Potentially was going to not only raise the fuel efficiency for cars to 35 miles per gallon, also, again, not as high as it needs to be, but a step forward. It was also going to increase the amount of electricity that had to come from renewable energy, and it was going to take away these taxpayer handouts to big oil. Yes, you subsidize big oil. You don't just get gouged at the pump. You get gouged on tax day as well, because that money of yours goes into the pockets of big oil. There was a bill that was going to change that, take away a lot of those handouts and subsidies, and shift that into tax credits for renewable energy. Have an energy policy that actually produces the kind of energy you and I want. But when that bill cleared the House, went over to the Senate, like 56 other times in the past year, the conservative minority filibustered it and obstructed it. Even though it had a majority support in the Senate, even though it has majority support in the country, it was throttled by over 40 conservative senators, and one oil-soaked Democrat from Louisiana, Mary Landrieu. John McCain, who you might know is running for president, he is actually one of the Republicans that tries to wrap himself up in the cloak, in the mantle of environmentalism. He has supported global warming bills in the past. He has campaigned in New Hampshire on energy independence. And yet, even though his vote would have been the 60th vote that would have defeated that filibuster and allowed that bill to go to the president, he did not bother to show up for the vote. And could it be that he has gotten $200,000 from oil and gas industries during this presidential campaign cycle? I don't know. It's that kind of issue that we should be talking about here, because it's important to know. Now, I have no expectation that any significant energy global warming legislation will get enacted into law, that will get Bush's signature or to get 2/3 support in the House and Senate to override his veto. That is extremely unlikely. The forces of obstructionism are too defiant. But because action is needed so urgently, it's important to build and broaden the mandate for what needs to be done now, so the next government in 2009 can hit the ground running. So we can give that person and give the new Congress and give the new president that mandate so he can push back on those forces of obstructionism. He can be able, or she can be able to say, the voters clearly asked for this, and if you don't vote for it, you're in trouble in your next election. So let's understand what needs to be done here, what was on the table. This is the wonky part of it, increasing the standards for renewable electricity, investing in renewable energy instead of giving handouts to big oil. On the global warming side, having strong targets. 80% we need to cut our carbon emissions by 2050. And this is the weak part of the global warming bill that passed the Senate committee. When capping greenhouse gas emissions, what they do is they call us cap and trade. You give permits to polluters. You can pollute this much. Here's a permit. You can pollute this much. We're going to limit it. We're going to gradually limit it more and more and more over time. So we're going to hit those targets. But you have a permit to pollute this much for right now, and you can trade those permits with other companies. The key question is, do you hand out those permits for free, or do you make polluters pay for them in an auction? And it's a big difference. Either it's a handout to oil companies and coal companies so they can pollute for free some more, which is the problem now. Right now, there's no disincentive to polluting. We all pay the cost for polluting, but the companies don't. It's our sky, it's our atmosphere, yet they get to pollute it at will. Or do you put a price on pollution and put a disincentive to polluting excessively? That's what needs to happen. And this bill only goes a part way. It only auctions off a quarter of the permits initially. It goes up to 3/4 way down the road. Way too slow to actually get the job done. Global warming is an issue where you can only compromise so much. Either you solve the problem or you don't. Either the climate is maintained or we end up in a climate crisis, which we're on the verge of right now, if not already in. And so this bill falls just short, and just short's not going to be good enough. So we need to understand what needs to happen. And to the credit of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and John Edwards, and I believe also Bill Richardson, they all proposed plans that would make polluters pay completely. But they're not talking about it so much. And that's the problem. You don't build the mandate unless you talk about it more, unless we talk about it more. And we have to recognize that those ideas could be passed into law now if it wasn't for conservative obstructionism. When you see articles in the newspaper about how so little is getting done in Congress, it tends to be pox on both their houses. Democrats fail on their strategy. Conservatives obstructing. Everybody sucks. Let's put the blame where it belongs. So many things, energy and beyond, would be into law now because the majority support is there now if it wasn't for the record level of filibustering that's going on top of the now veto-happy president. There are certainly blame to be put on the shoulders of Democrats. They could fight harder. they could keep these bills on the floor of the Senate and make them filibuster for weeks on end so the public can see very clearly who is at fault here. It would build public pressure on those obstructionists. Maybe you'd even crack a few more senators and shift them over because of the public outrage. We don't see that so much, and that is the fault of the Democrats. That's a technical complaint. On the substance of the policy, the fault bears on the conservative obstructionists. And we can only beat that by building and broadening the mandate for change, laying out what the specific change needs to be, running on it, voting on it in the next election so the mandate is unmistakable and unstoppable. To that point, we're going to be asking questions to our next guest after the break, the author of the new book, Fear and Courage in the Democratic Party, Glenn Horowitz. He's got some thoughts on how Democrats can stiffen up their spines, build some more courage, and build that kind of mandate so we can get real change in 2009. This is Bill Scher on the Liberal Oasis radio show on WHMP, News, Information, and the Arts. Back after the break with Glenn Horowitz.